He's been locked away for too long. It's time for Boba Fett to come back. All that and more in today's video. Hey guys, this is Justin. Hello and welcome to another video. So before we begin, I do have some personal news to share. Two of my best friends are going through something very difficult. Their names are Mark and Sophie. They learned earlier this year that they were expecting their first child. However, just a couple of weeks later, Sophie, who's only in her early 30s, was also diagnosed with breast cancer. Unfortunately, she's had to start an aggressive chemo regime, which will continue even after the birth of their child. Thankfully, the medical stuff is covered in Canada, but the financials are still tough. Sophie, for example, was just finishing a year-long internship. Now that's essentially gone away. Anyway, the family started a GoFundMe. I know things are tough right now, but if you want to help out two people, I can vouch for two people who are good people. I'll put a link down in the description. No pressure. We're going to take care of them either way, but if you want to help, you can. Okay, so a few days ago on my podcast, TapCaf Transmissions, I did my rankings of every Star Wars show. Definitely controversial, I think. Partially because I rank the Clone Wars as a whole fairly low, but also because I'm a Book of Boba Fett defender. Now, I won't pretend that the show as a complete package is amazing or anything like that. The show has a ton of issues, but almost none of them are related to the character of Boba Fett himself, and that's what I found so frustrating. The Book of Boba Fett was clearly a victim of the success of The Mandalorian as a TV show. My theory, I know I've stated this on the channel before, is that John and Dave saw that there was going to be a gap between Mando Season 2 and Season 3. They were worried about losing what was, at the time, incredible cultural growth from The Mandalorian and Grogu especially, so they hijacked the Book of Boba Fett and essentially turned it into Mando Season 2.5. This ended up being worse for The Mandalorian as a show, but certainly the Book of Boba Fett, which at 7 episodes already was slightly hamstrung in its ability to tell a complete story. That being said, I do think the first 3 or so episodes offered a lot and could have been the introduction to a really fun and interesting storyline. I'll get back to my thoughts on that in a second, but the reason I'm talking about this now is because Collider actually posted bits of a brief interview Maggie Lovett had with Temuera Morrison. Of course, a link to the original article down in the description. But the article quotes Temuera Morrison, who says, "I'm sad too. Where's the Book of Boba Fett Season 2? Where the hell is Season 2? I know they're doing Ahsoka Season 2. I'm going, where's my Season 2? He continues, "Dave and John, I actually ran into them at Celebration. You know what it's like when you see those guys. They got a look on their face and there's so much going on. And I go, hey, remember Boba Fett? We had a big hug. And at the end of the day, I said, look, I'm not sure what's going on with you guys, but anyway, I had a great time. Thank you so much." He ends on a slightly positive note, comparing himself to a can of preserved peaches, basically saying that he's been preserved for a later date, but that will make him tastier. Also complimenting Andor. And yeah, Andor is great. I love that Temuera sees that. So yeah, I'll echo his frustrations. Temuera has been wasted and underused. I don't get why he wasn't brought in for The Mandalorian Season 3. You know, I had issues with how Mandalore was handled in Star Wars Legends, but I always did like Boba Fett becoming Mandalore. Now, I think there are other good options for Mandalore in Star Wars canon, but as the most famous, is he a Mandalorian? Is he not? A dude wearing Mandalorian armor at the very least, he should have been involved in the taking back of Mandalore, even if it was just Slave 1, Boba Fett's starship, participating in the space battle. The most frustrating thing, though, isn't his absence, both as Boba Fett and as perhaps Rex in other series. It's the fact that Boba Fett as a character gives us so many interesting options and possibilities. And I actually think we saw a little bit of this in the first few episodes of the Book of Boba Fett, where the show did a really good job at giving us a look at the underworld, you know, the various criminal empires. Obviously, that didn't last as the show was hijacked and Boba Fett became more focused on sort of being a mayor-type figure for Tatooine. But Boba and also Fennec Shand are unique in that they are developed characters not particularly tied to one specific faction, who I think could fulfill a role I initially thought Din Djarin would, a purveyor of the underworld. And nothing that's happened so far in Boba Fett's story would actually stop this from happening. Now that Boba Fett Fett has his sort of syndicate set up on Tatooine, we could see a lower stakes show where he basically interfaces with the rest of the criminal underworld. I would like a show with a smaller budget, but more episodes, with only minimal tie-ins, if any, to characters like The Mandalorian or people within the New Republic. One thing that I think Lucasfilm should have learned from their time working on the Clone Wars is how important it is to have an established underworld. The Book of Boba Fett, games like Star Wars Outlaws, they're still benefiting from characters and factions established during the Clone Wars. Much of that would be different now in the post-Endor New Republic era. Boba Fett could have been a really interesting vehicle to see who are the big new criminal slumlords, who are the evil ones, who are the chaotic neutral ones, who are the ones the New Republic may eventually face off against, or who are the scoundrels with the heart of gold. We could have had a show which, again, followed that Western format, really focusing on interesting places, aliens, adventures of the week, and I just think that would have been so much more fun than a show honestly derailed by The Mandalorian. And again, you develop the character of Boba Fett more and more, he becomes an asset. You can bring him in as a main character for other shows. It's like in Legends, Boba Fett made a ton of appearances. Look at Legacy of the Force. But so did characters like Talon Card, an info broker and smuggler who I honestly thought Boba Fett was going to be the canon version of. Anyway, those are my thoughts, but because this video is a little shorter, we'll end with a quick hashtag AskEck. And Bolo Gaming says, upon my rereading of the Legacy era Star Wars books, I noticed the word reluctantly is used often. Yeah, I'll put the rest of the comment on screen there, but there are definitely some Star Wars authors who are known for their particular words. In canon, for example, I think Chuck Wendig is really well known for his writing style, lots of silly metaphors and just silliness overall. In Legends though, when I think of someone who reused a lot of words, Timothy Zahn has got to be number one. So many lightsabers are snap hissing on, but the big one though, especially in the original Thrawn trilogy, sardonic. Everyone is giving a sardonic nod or looking at someone else sardonically. Flicker of pseudo motion is one you hear a lot as well. Anyway, that's all I've got. I'll see you next time. Bye bye.